Welcome, everyone, to the Fantasy Phoenix podcast, here to give you tips for NBL SuperCoach. We're back in front of the camera this week after our unlucky bout of sickness, so let's jump in and review round 11 of NBL SuperCoach. It was a round that was disappointing, but it definitely could have been worse. We were hit with a creak injury, but we still managed to get to 380 points overall, and a slight green arrow up to 136th in the competition. Thankfully, we got rid of Josh Roberts, who somehow managed to lose both cash and points. He didn't even have a net gain in anything. It was better to have no one than to have him. Roll with a squad of 9 instead of a squad of 10, and he would have had a better week. I don't know how he did that. It's almost a skill to suck that much, but anyway. Once again, we managed to hold top spot in both the head-to-head and open leagues of the Podmasters Cup competition. So I don't know how we're going to manage to keep this stretch going. The whole year would be great, but we'll see how we go. Make sure you're following along on X to track our progress and see if we can take it all out. The creak injury is probably the biggest news from the week. He looks set to miss this round at the minimum with that knee issue, but there are some conflicting reports out there. Either way, he's a must-trade for all of us owners, unfortunately. In some other news around the Phoenix big man, Gorjak Gak will also miss at least the first game of their double this Friday night against the Taipans, which the NBL has said is going ahead despite some of the weather issues that are happening up in Cairns. With that means that they've got the DP coming in, but there's only one big man, so I think it's time to get saucy. Nearly every team is on the double this week with 8 out of the 10 teams, so there are lots of options for our trade-ins. Be aware though, only Cairns have a double this week and next, so most of the people you're looking to trade in are going to follow it up with a single. So with that in mind, let's have a look at some players to potentially trade in or out of our sides in our buy, sell, keep and avoid segment. Buy are players that I think are good options to trade into your team if you don't already own them. Sell are players I think are good options to trade out of your team if you do own them. Keep are players that are being traded out by the competition, but I think you should consider keeping. And avoid are players that are being traded in by the others in the competition, but I think you should consider avoiding. Here's how our options went last week. Our buy Jordan Crawford had an average week with 48, but we were unsure if Doyle would be back for the round when we made that call. I brought him in, and this week's double is the one that I was most looking forward to as to why I wanted a jack jumper guard in my squad. So hopefully we're in for a nicer score this week. Our sell, Josh Roberts managed to score a -1 for the round and lose 24k. Oh boy. Our keep, Jonah Bolden, had a lower scoring round with 14, but the schedule was the main reason we were encouraging people to hold on to him. Finally, our avoid, Fabian Krislovic, had 10 points across the double for a teeny cash rise. Even with Lee in foul trouble, he just isn't getting much output. Overall, I don't think we did too badly there. Moving on to this week. Our buy. Alan Williams. Yes, he does cost a lot of money and has a break even of 90, but he's also on the double this week with no Mitch Creek and now no Gorjak Gak for at least one of those games. The only other big man is a DP that has hardly played all year. Source has also been very vocal about his desire to remain on the court and to essentially just get down to business. If the Phoenix are to win, he will need to have big games. And even in his lesser games, he's still getting double-double efforts. For the 85% of the competition that don't have him, be very afraid of what the big man is capable of this week. Sell, Josh Roberts. Doubling down from last week with a -1 performance in Game 1 and a DNP CD in Game 2. Roberts has really let everyone down and picked him up big time. With some help from Adam Ford. With a few cheaper or similarly priced guys with better schedules and minutes as options out there, the 8% of the competition that still have Josh Roberts really need to get him out now. Keep. Patrick Miller. He did have a disappointing week, but I was pretty surprised to see him this highly traded out across the competition. He has proven to be one of the best SuperCoach performers for the year. He does have a high break even and will probably lose a little bit of cash, but this guy can put up big numbers. There are a lot of the teams on the double this week, but it's next week when Cairns are one of only 2 teams on the double that I think you're really going to need him. Definitely not in my trade plans, and I don't think he should be in yours either. Avoid. Clint Steindl. Another cheap jack jumper this week, and another one that I am as strongly against as I was with Krislovic. Steindl has been an NBL favourite of mine since his days at the Crocs, but he's not one to look at for SuperCoach. With Doyle only going to increase in output as he gets his legs back under him, Steindl probably won't see as much action as what we probably would want from him. If you need a cheap downgrade for your bench, or just to get rid of Josh Roberts, in the same price bracket you have guys like Nick Marshall from Adelaide or AJ Johnson from the Hawks, who are looking to have increased opportunities and much better schedules in the run home. A massive double game week this round, with 8 out of 10 teams on doubles, gives us lots of options for captaincy. Last week, in our 4 players, we had the top 3 scoring guys and Mitch Creek, who unfortunately got injured in game 1. This week, I'm sticking to some familiar faces with Alan Williams, Tajir McCall, Anthony Lamb, and Jalen Adams. I would be cautious with Lamb and even PJC, who is also a fairly decent option, with Cheatham and Will McDowell-White potential to coming back into the lineup this week. We don't know how they're all going to go together. Even if they do come back, they're probably not going to have extremely high outputs, so it shouldn't hamper them too much, but just keep that in mind if you are going to put the C on a New Zealand player. With all that news we've had about no Gorjak Gak in game 1 at least, Creek's still out, Moller's out, there's not a lot of big man options, this guy's got a lot of pride, I can't see Big Sauce having a down week this week, and he's where my captaincy is going to be going. There are also some other options for a lot of people who have held Bryce Cotton throughout all this. He probably won't perform as well as he has in the last, excluding the Illawarra game, in the last few weeks. So do keep that in mind, but if you've got him and he's your highest averaging or highest performing player, you can definitely chuck the C on him. But I'd be sticking to one of the guys in this list. We've already seen Tajir McCall's ceiling. Yes, he did have a down game in that first outing of this round just gone, but we know how big he can go. Only player to crack the ton in a round, has 60-point efforts, multiple 40-point efforts. He just knows how to get SuperCoach points. His matchups aren't the worst this week either, and he's definitely a solid option. We know how big Anthony Lamb can go, and the Breakers still need to win games. He's got a pretty good floor too, so aside from the issue of potentially being impacted by Cheatham coming back into the lineup, Anthony Lamb we know can perform. If he's your best player, don't feel too bad about putting the captaincy on him. Lastly, Jalen Adams. The best performing king, the most consistent king, and they have a pretty good double this week. Adams wasn't in the league last year, so he missed out on the inaugural Christmas Day game. But this week, coming up against the Illawarra Hawks on Christmas night, I can just see him going off for a big one. If you're bringing him in or you've held him, I think he's a good safety option. He might not have the highest ceiling of these players, but he's definitely got one of the higher floors. My trades last round were a bit unlucky. I used the third boost for the year to move out Lamb, PJC, and Josh Roberts to Creek, Crawford, and Matt Kenyon. The Creek injury really hurt the success of that trade, and Crawford, and even Kenyon to an extent, underperformed. The good news is we didn't lose any value across those trades, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier, this is the week I wanted to have Crawford in for, so we'll judge the move at the end of this round. This week's moves are a bit forced with that Creek injury. He has to go, and there's a couple of different directions that I'm looking to move. The most likely scenario is Creek goes down to Galloway, and then either Bobby Clintman or Matt Kenyon go to an Adelaide player in preparation for next week. If it's Matt Kenyon, it'll be DJ, 3J, or Kell, depending on if I want to go for a bit of value with that break even, or if we just want to go for a high-scoring, high-value player. If it's Clintman, then it's going to be either Jacob Wiley, or we use the DPP of Saar, move him to the forward spot, and then bring in Isaac Humphries. So we'll see what we want to do there. As always, I'm going to be going back and forth until the lockout. Going to chop and change. But as always, I'll post the final team on X, so be sure to be following us there at FantasyPhoenix_ if you're not already, so you can check out that. Also, if you have any questions, whether it's start, sits, trade advice, any feedback, comments, even if you want to bag out some of the moves we made, whatever you want to do, feel free to drop down any comments on X or in the video below. thanks to everyone that does that already. For those that leave regular comments or asking questions regularly, just having a chat, we really, really appreciate it. Speaking of appreciation, thank you so much everyone for watching or listening, depending on where you tuned in. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. It's very much appreciated on our end. Good luck for round 12, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.